What's the most professional way you've heard said, "frick you," in the workplace? Overheard my boss once say, "Our policy is," long pause while he loads up his phrasing, then clearly changes his mind and just says, "No," literally 30 years ago, and still gives me a chuckle. I'm imagining him playing the potential scenarios through his brain before saying, "Frick it, just no, I can't be bothered with this bull right now." If that is your understanding of the current agreement, we need to revisit the language so that your expectation levels can be set more appropriately. I used to have a coworker who was a know-it-all who could actually back it up. We had a memory leak, for non-programmers, a very big issue, and he found it and was making the fix. He said something in the lines of, "The leak is in line 247," and our boss goes nuts. Spends an hour ranting about how he wrote that code himself and there was no way the leak was there, and how dumb he was to think it was there. Coworker lets him talk for an hour, then with the best poker face says, "That's great, but the leak is in line 247, then demonstrates it in a minute. I was in a meeting where we were planning out a huge client presentation, and one of the guys who was there just went off on a complete diatribe of how he would go about adding some flair. He was known for being a loudmouth, and after about 15 minutes of his plans, the team lead just literally put up his hand and waited for him to stop talking. He sat there for 30 seconds in silence and then moved on, no addressing anything that was just said. The frick you lawyer letters that I have seen usually start with "please be advised" and end with "govern yourself accordingly." Letters from lawyers are a goldmine of passive-aggressive language. My family works in the textile industry. Once, my dad worked at a company that had a vendor that made buttons for various types of clothes. They had not paid this vendor yet, but my dad's boss was still pressuring him to pressure the vendor to get something done. I don't recall the specifics. Well, the button vendor had taken enough crap, so he made a custom run of buttons and sent them back a shirt in which every button had "frick you, pay me" custom engraved into it. Professional etiquette? No, definitely not. Professional frick you? Most definitely. Those buttons would definitely sell. Once heard a coworker bust out in a monotone voice, "Mom, I need you to know that I am not emotionally invested in this conversation. What do you need so we can both go on with our lives?" Really had to stifle my laughter in my cube next to her. I wish I could say that to customers. I am not contractual obligated to fulfill that request. It is also important to note that doing so would also be a violation of international trade laws. I am not contractual obligated to fulfill that request. It is also important to note that doing so would also be a violation of international animal husbandry laws. I'm terribly sorry you feel that way. Please feel free to contact our complaints department. To someone who wanted an appointment on a day when there were no appointments available, but insisted that she would come in on that day, at that time, you're more than welcome to come in on that day, but I'm afraid there will be nobody available to see you. You'll have much better luck if we simply book an appointment for a different day. I'm terribly sorry you feel that way. How to make it seem like you're apologizing without actually apologizing. I work as a contractor to the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration. The best professional frick you I've seen was via email. There's this other contractor who is one of those types of know-it-alls that has to tell everyone how they should do things, often unsolicited, and likes to write really wordy, long emails to convince everyone of how smart he is. One day, he sent out an email suggesting some sweeping changes to our rollout schedule for some new ATC equipment, and took the liberty of sending his revised schedule to everyone. Feds, contractors, upper management, upper management, sites, etc. After several hours of us all privately marveling at the audacity and stupidity of this guy's massive overstep, the Fed that is in charge of our entire program reply alls. The email started hilariously with "Thank you for your interest in aviation safety. As we discussed, contractors cannot set policy for the agency and do not have the authority to make decisions on behalf of the government." Then it went on for several paragraphs, ending with tips on how he can apply for jobs within the federal agency if he wants to pull crap like this. It was a massively embarrassing smackdown for this guy. We were all super happy to see him get his dong knocked in the dirt. It's kind of hard to explain why the first sentence "thank you for your interest in aviation safety" was so funny without being able to describe the guy that wrote it, but it was meant to be super condescending. I still have the email saved in my inbox. Please commission someone to make a needlepoint that says "thank you for your interest in aviation safety" and gift it to the Fed guy. He deserves something to commemorate that reply. When I quit my last job, I wrote a kindly email to all my colleagues thanking them for their guidance and relationship, explaining how I enjoyed my time there. Around 60 people were on the email. I did not put my abusive sociopath manager or enabling cold-hearted director on the email. They found out, and I'm sure others noticed. After nothing more than a cold response to my first quitting email to my group, all of a sudden my director wanted to make amends to save face now that I sent the wider email. She asked me why I didn't add her on the email about enjoying working with people and liking my time there. I responded because that wouldn't be honest. Bridges burned there, but man, those two ruined my life for a while. Literally every friend I ever had who was honest on their exit either fired, or by resignation, went on to do far better and more than proved themselves worthy of their careers. Honest people really do typically win in the long run. I had the sweetest old lady as a co-worker. She had been in the company for like 20 years. She knew more about our systems than most of our IT staff. One day, a senior manager in the IT department comes in and tries to tell her that her code was wrong. She put her hand on her chest, shook her head, said "bless your heart darling," and turned around in her chair to continue working. Our boss laughed so hard and calmly explained to the IT manager why the code should probably not be changed. I wish I have the expertise and years of experience under my belt to do what she just did. Work in a retail store. Currently in charge of product merchandising while the role is empty. Trying to gain a lot of experience in different roles before jumping to grams. Visual director for the region hates me for a reason that is not apparent to me. I've been doing a good job with the little support I've had. Better customer comments. Higher average transactions. etc. She decides to stop in one day and do a visual walkthrough and give feedback. Great. Asks for an email wrap up after we're done. Find. Send email. Get back a scathing response from her about how I'm not following this guide she sent out 2 weeks ago and how I'm still using a decoration that was supposed to be pulled last flip. Blah blah blah. And CC's my boss and my boss's boss to get me in trouble. Great. I'll play this game. Respond to her in a very polite manner. CCing my boss and her boss and added for good taste the visual director's boss. 1. I'm sorry. Name retracted. I've searched through my email twice now and can't find this guide. My boss just forwarded it to me and I can see that I was never on the original recipient list. My boss was gone that week, so I apologize I never got it. Would you mind CCing me as well moving forward with this stuff? 2. I'm sorry you were upset we were still using those decorations, but they were in every picture I sent in for the last story set. Did you not get a chance to review those? Still the most satisfying thing to date. I hate that lady. I've been doing a good job with the little support I've had. Better customer comments. Higher average transactions. etc. Found why she hates you. During a meeting, a British manager made a comment about a TV show from the 1990s. New employee, who loves to emphasize he is young and others are old, says that show was on before I was born. Manager, you should check it out. Things were good before you were born. Oof. Attorney, I want these changes made to the document. My boss, no. Attorney, you have to make these changes. My boss, I'm not going to. Attorney, I insist. My boss, but it's not going to happen. So here we are. There's no way you can force me to show you my ad to cash a check. Me, there's no way you can force me to cash the check for you then. Have a nice day. Next costumer please. Those sassy costumers. In a monthly team meeting of about 45 people, a woman stood up and announced, "I respectfully disagree with everything you just said. It was amazing. We still use it around the workplace as a joke." My dad is the finance manager at a car dealership and he once told me, "Bonsai, it's not what you say, but how you say it." To illustrate his point, He popped his head out of his office, smiled his biggest, happiest smile, and said, "Hey, frick you," to the first employee he saw. The employee turned, saw my dad's face and, sure as crap, smiled back and said frick you too and kept walking. See also, 2009 Sparks live long and prosper. In order to maintain efficiency, I'd prefer to engage with your decision-making team. Translation: I'd rather not waste my time talking to you. Your opinion doesn't matter to either of our organizations. I was told during grad school that this is the meaning of duly noted. It implies that you heard the person, will remember it, but not do a goddamn thing about it. Duly noted. Me, a private in the army, working at a checkpoint in the Middle East, to a colonel and several captains lieutenants. Me, so you all need to step out of the vehicle so I can do my search. Lieutenant, driver, I have a distinguished visitor, let us through. Me, sir, unless you have a memo you need to submit to a search. Colonel, I'm a goddamn DV, distinguished visitor, let me in. Me, do you have a memo? Memos were sometimes approved which allowed vehicles to pass without searches. Driver, I'm sure it's all taken care of. Me, I have not received a memo for you guys and you don't have one yourselves. Step out of the vehicle or turn around and leave, i.e. get out or turn around buttholes. Sounds like not much, but I'm at the absolute lowest end of the totem pole and this guy commands hundreds of soldiers. Absolute balls. You followed procedure. The O5 and their clusterfuck were trying to shortcut security procedures in different circumstances that would have been met without going fire. Crap might have rolled downhill on you later, but you did the right thing. Me, I'd have asked for an order, in writing, that I should ignore SOP. So, one I got to do as an articling student, lawyer in training. So, some guy had sued our client. We were both defending and counterclaiming. My boss says, "Okay, this is some stupid crap from the other side. Find a way to sort this out." What was the stupid crap? The other side had agreed to accept service of the statement of defense, but not of the counterclaim. So, he was arguing we needed to serve the counterclaim on the plaintiff personally. So, I sent back a letter along these lines. "Dear sir, I note that Rule X of the Rules of Court specifies that if you are counsel of record on this matter, then service on you is sufficient. The rule does not allow for selective acceptance of service for some documents and not others. If you are denying that you are counsel of record, then I note that Rule Y specifies that the procedure is that all actions on this matter are immediately to be halted until things are resolved by the court. Please see attached case law indicating that where this occurs due to tactical gamesmanship by a party, that the courts have awarded costs on a solicitor and own client basis, i.e., that they would have been on the hook for our client's full, actual legal bills, much cash. I trust you will determine that you are in fact counsel of record and service of these documents is accepted. Please advise immediately." We very hastily got back a yes. We are his lawyers. We accept service. One of my most satisfying frick off and quit your bulls moments of my legal career. In the event that you do not agree with the above, we refer you to the case of Arkle v Prestdrum. Co-worker who is quiet, nice and a hard worker generally likes to be left alone and if pushed only ever engages in mild small talk. Have known him a long time. New guy in the office comes in all sprightly and full of beans and starts chatting with my quiet co-worker. Things take a personal turn and the new guy asks him if he's married. My co-worker deadpan replies, "My wife is dead." Conversation over instantly. I know for a fact his wife is very much alive. My kind of co-worker. I'm friendly and will engage, but I generally prefer to keep to myself. I worked for a crappy manager who trashed my work in a performance review. It was an absurd critique that I contested with upper management. In the body of my response, I used my manager's initials rather than his full name. His initials were MF. Working at a call center taking orders from magazines. Customer's credit card keeps getting declined. Tells me you can stick the dang card up your butt. I reply, "I'm sorry sir, but you're the only authorized user on the card." I had tech support on the phone tell me I was being irate and hang up on me. I had just calmly and clearly explained my issue. That was their fault and ended with, "I don't need to hear how sorry you are that I'm experiencing problems. I just need a solution. If you can't help me, please transfer me to someone who can." I once worked on a software project for visa file processing on project. The API that I used in the project we tried to make had a memory leak that was practically impossible to handle and would crash the service a few days later when the server ran out of memory. Early on I made an alternative solution. Was rejected. Junior me was practically ignored. Needle in a haystack work resumed. Delays happened. Senior consultant suggests and employs a solution identical to my recommendation on the cusp of the deadline. Email chain floated around. I put in my part with a small timeline of events and links to related email chains. Specifically I wanted my boss, I was a contractor, to know and see my position. One of the bank's employees CC'd the whole chain to the higher ups later on. My email was found and dissected. Said bosses found the source of the he said she said balls. It was clear they simply ignored me and were covering their asses in the blame game. Many people resigned. Had a clinical specialist at work once who was out to get me. I normally hate it when people say that, but when co-workers repeatedly came up to me and explained that they thought she was out to get me I conceded. Anyway, she tried to call me out for not documenting a surgical incision on a patient, and called my manager over to witness the encounter. I had no idea what she was talking about, as I hadn't had any post-op traumas in weeks. Finally, as she was digging into me I realized she was talking about a patient whose surgery had been cancelled due to fever. She never set foot in the OR. Once my realization hit, you mean the woman from room X 4 weeks ago? That woman never had surgery. That's why there was no incision to document on. Was the best FU in the workplace ever. The follow-up, well perhaps you should reread your note to confirm. Was the best and your little dog, too. I had a terrible supervisor years ago. She was dumb as dirt, but thought she was brilliant. If we had a good idea we had to convince her that it was her idea first, then she would implement it. One day, she was going on and on about some stupid new policy she wanted to start. One of the newer co-workers was trying to argue with her about it. Finally the boss turned to me in frustration and said, "When I give an order you need to do it, right, middle-aged?" I responded with, "Right boss. When you tell me to do something, I do it, no matter how stupid it is." She said thank you and left the room. Have a magical day. Working for the mouse we aren't allowed to be rude. This is pretty universally used as a frick you. I worked there 2 years and I got to hear about how a guest tried to get someone in trouble for using that phrase. I almost died laughing when that story made it to me. I'm a physical therapist and I speak with Polish accent. Had this obnoxious client complaining of back pain once. Part of the assessment is to find out the aggravating symptoms tied to specific function. This woman couldn't answer the basic questions, so I started my elimination process by giving her examples of common activities. When I asked her if making bed in the morning makes her pain worse, she looked me straight in the eye and replied, "I wouldn't know how to. I have my Polish maid to do this for me." Very politely I have answered, "That's actually not very complicated thing to do, but I think I understand where are you coming from." She never came back. As someone whose mom is a Polish cleaning lady, thank you for that. Unfortunately your position no longer exists in our current management model. Or, you've been promoted to customer. Both of these from Circuit City RIP. Well sir, that's not going to happen. Judge to a guy who wanted my case against him dismissed because he was a sovereign citizen and he claimed that the court didn't have jurisdiction over him. Some customer made a really stupid complaint to one of the workers at my dad's workplace. Something had happened to the customer that day unrelated to the business transaction and somehow that was our problem. He replied, "I'm really sorry you feel that way. Please submit that to our complaints team at the office over there. Speak to Jenna. Jenna is a mannequin." When someone interrupts a presentation with a dumbass question or statement, that is an interesting point. Pretend to write something down. I'll come back to that later. At a roast of my ex-boss when he was leaving our department, so a professional frick you is actually appropriate and expected. I told him, "The respect and leadership you've shown our team simply cannot be stated. The amount of attention you all put into my work shows how little you put into yours." Anytime upper management says anything to the effect of "we value our employees," was especially poignant at the annual state of the company meeting. Profits were up, production was up, beat our sister companies as per usual. Still lost a vacation day and pay has stagnated for a while. Would have been more pleasant to just stick a giant "frick you guys" sign on the announcements board and save some time. I apologize for the delay in responding to your email. I wanted to ensure that I could give this matter the time and attention it deserves. I mean, someone in upper management just came up and said "frick you" to me when he didn't like my answer. He was always pretty direct. That is fairly direct. Old co-worker of mine was telling me he used to drive a forklift and had an butthole boss. Came back from lunch 2 minutes late and the manager said "you're fired. Move your last load on the forklift and leave." Co-worker, okay, and gets back in the forklift and dumps the load right onto the floor and spills everywhere. Manger, what the heck? Pick this SHT up. Co-worker, you pick it up. I don't work here anymore. A notoriously rude customer came into the store and my manager told me to serve him. I told him I wouldn't. He asked me why. I said, "I reserve the right to refuse service to anyone." I said it so seriously he was completely taken aback. I wasn't forced to serve him. This was years and years ago, like early 1990s. I was trained on the word processing computer, the only one in the office of a law firm, like CPM system and a special program. I told my manager the password, so if anything happened to me. Long story short, they fired me and escorted me out of the office. 3 days later my manager called me at home and nicely asked me if I'd give her the password number. I gave it to you back when I first set it up 2 years before. She said she understood. Going to summarize an email chain between me, my new boss, my old boss, he's a prick, and a few higher ups in my old department. Prick. Why are you not in the department today? Your old boss said you were to be here 3 hours per day. No exceptions. You're leaving us with work and that's not good. New boss, please honor your commitments to your old department. Me. Outlines everything I did that week and explains why I had no work to do. What am I missing? What stuff am I not doing? Prick. But takes new boss out of CC. I don't know. Talk to other manager. I was told you had work. Me. Re-entering new boss into CC. Okay, I will. I'd hate to think you're accusing me of not doing something when I clearly already have. Sir, what would you say to one of your workers if they called you a son of a bitch? Boss, I'd fire them immediately. Well, I'd never say that, sir, but that's good to know. I work in healthcare with lots of non-compliant patients. One old lady loves to argue with everything the nurse practitioner tells her she needs to be doing. One day the NP finally told her, "I'm sorry you don't like the answers I'm giving you, but they are the answers." Maybe not a direct "frick you," but when doing references for employees who sucked, I can only confirm that "they worked here" is basically me saying yeah, they worked here. They were crap and I have nothing good to say about them. It's kind of a read between the lines type thing and the person calling me for the reference tends to get it. If someone asks you to be a reference and you couldn't weasel out of it, just stick to saying they worked with you and you have no further comments. Don't risk your own professional integrity because of some toolbag that probably quit a week before they were going to be fired. My mother used to be a manager for a company and she would always say that if she had fired a terrible employee and they wanted a reference, she would say, "I can confirm that he worked here from X date to X date and he is not eligible for rehire." I worked in a call center. There was a big bathroom outside the entrance and a small 2-stall bathroom in the back. There was a lady in the handicapped stall. I have back and knee issues, and at the time, I couldn't get up off a toilet without the grab bar. It was silent. Apparently she couldn't poop cause I was in the room and I couldn't pee cause she was in the handicapped stall. Finally she gave up and came out. I said, "It sucks when 2 people need to have the handicapped bathroom at the same time. They should really have more handicapped bathrooms for people like us." She turned beet red, barely washed her hands and over there. I knew she wasn't handicapped. It was a great stall with a frosted window. Poor lady. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.